What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Four Corner Society. My name is Ben, and I am going to be doing a Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition tier list for the Aerotheurge. A little bit about me: I absolutely love turn-based strategy games, and I love RPGs. And with Lorien Studios creating Baldur's Gate 3, I'm really excited for them. I love Lorien Studios. I've played Divinity Original Sin. I've played, Divinity Original Sin 2, and I'm really anticipating the release that they're essentially saying, hey, we're going to be releasing this in 2023, Baldur's Gate 3. So I'm playing through all of their other games that are very similar to Baldur's Gate 3. So what I'm going to do is be making tier list videos for all of the other games that they've created. In this case, we're doing an Aerotheurge Divinity Original Sin first one Enhanced Edition. And we're going to be going over the Novice Skills, Adept, and then Master. And then at the end of the video, we're also going to be going over what is like your ideal generic Aerotheurge Mage build. This is for a generic mage. This is not for like because in Divinity, if you've played the game, you can literally play it any way that you possibly want. Some spells will be great in certain comps, some spells will not be great in certain comps. So I'm going to rate them based on how effective they are at like majority of the time, if that makes sense. So before I move on, if you could like, subscribe to the video. Also, we stream live on Kick at the Four Corner Society, which we try to do once a week right now. We post shorts from that. But yeah, just give us a follow there on Kick as well, so you can chat with us and see how we're doing and see how we're playing the games that we all love and enjoy. So without further ado, we're actually going to go into the tier list right now, starting off with the Avatar of Storms build. So I'll just briefly say what it is. Make a target immune to being electrified, and then melee attackers may get stunned. This spell is extremely useful when it comes to being able to remove stun from one of your party members. Say the enemy has increased initiative and they stun one of your main people. This can take that away. And also it has a really nice effect as well, where it's able to inflict stun potentially on melee attackers. So I actually see this skill being like double usage, but in Divinity, the way the combat system works, you really are the one on the offensive basically all the time. If you are the one receiving crowd control and you're the one having to stop it from happening to you, you're playing combat wrong. You need to apply as many crowd control abilities as you possibly can, so that way if they can't take a turn, they're not dealing damage to you. So this is why this is not S tier or A tier. I'm actually just going to keep this one in B tier. It's a solid skill. It has some of its uses, it has some niche uses, and for that reason it's just B tier. Next up, we're going to actually be going into the Bitter Cold spell right here. This is Bitter Cold. I'm putting that one in S tier. It is so valuable because it freezes a target. Freezes target, like I was saying, crowd control is the number one thing. Being able to freeze whatever target that you basically want, and if you can combine this with like witchcraft, which reduces the resistances, meaning that you can basically make this an auto freeze on the opponent or the encounter's like number one enemy, it's super useful to do that. So highly recommend going with Bitter Cold. Next up, we're going to go into a Blitz Bolt, which is this fine and handy dandy spell right here. Shoots a bolt of electricity that deals XY air damage. This one is just as great. It's like an average damage deal, and it also has a chance to stun as well. So I'm going to put that in the A tier. You can use this on surfaces. So if there's water on the ground, you can use it on a surface to electrify it, and that way you can stun a large majority of people, which is really good as well. And with the damage plus potential of being able to crowd control somebody, it's always a plus. So I'll put that in the A tier for the Aerotheurge, baby. Next up, we have the Shocking Touch spell. So Shocking Touch, I'm also going to put in the A tier because it has a very high chance to stun at 80%. It electrifies a nearby target, dealing XY air damage. The reason why I'm also putting in an A tier is if an enemy gets close to you, it allows you to essentially stun them and then walk away without taking attacks of opportunity. Um, CC is just the biggest thing in this game. So if you can CC your opponent, say if they so some encounters you're coming to where the boss automatically goes first, or they have like crazy high initiative and they're all going to go first. So there's many encounters in the game where no matter what, your characters are going to go second to the encounter that they're going into. So having this as basically a free stun for a character that's in melee range, super useful. So definitely needs to be in your builds as well. Next up, we have the teleportation. So teleportation is good in the social aspect. It allows you to not have to put points into things like telekinesis or have to have items that have telekinesis. I know there's some chests throughout the world where you have to, you can't actually physically be there. You have to like either teleport over or use telekinesis. So I like using teleportation so you can save your ability points and put them into more things that make your character better rather than having to waste a point into like telekinesis, for example. I don't It has a great social use. I never see myself using this spell in combat, so I'm actually going to put this in the B tier. It has uses. Say if a melee attacker doesn't get stunned or whatever, or doesn't get frozen, or it gets past your crowd control, you can just pick him up and then put him back to where he started. So that way he has to go through everything all over again. And by that time he's probably going to get stunned. And with the social component of this, definitely think this is really, really, really good in that aspect. So I'll rate it a B. Next up, we got the Thunder Jump. Thunder Jump with a generic build, guys. Generic build. It's going in the D tier. I do not see a use for this for a normal mage. You do not want them to get up close and personal because then they'll die very, very fast. This gets them up close and personal. I can see this if you're going with like a tank that opts into Aerotheurge, so that way they can quickly close the gap. Other than that, just shy away from this. Not necessarily the greatest ability. Next up, we have the Wind of Change ability. The Wind of Change, it cures petrified, slowed, and stunned. This one I'm also just going to put in the D tier. I see it as a worse version of Avatar of Storms. I just don't see this spell being that useful. Like I was saying, if you're the one receiving crowd control, you're playing combat wrong anyway. So this one, I would just rock Avatar of Storms, and I just put this one in the D tier. I think it just takes up a spot. But it is a novice spell, so you get 6 of them. So we'll get into like the ideal build at the end for a generic Aerotheurge mage. Next up, we're going to actually get into the adept spells, guys. The adept spells is, in my opinion, the bread and butter of this class, because of one spell in particular, and that is Headvice. Headvice is an easy S tier because it does a ton of damage. It is an insane damage, and it also has this thing that I call soft CC. It blinds your target. So if your target is right next to you, right next to your guy, and he's blinded, he can still attack. But if there's any space in between, he can't attack. So it's soft CC. So this is essentially a high damage CC that takes an opponent out of the fight. That is huge. It's so much value in this little spell. I love using it. It's an essential no matter what. Next up, we have the Invisibility. Invisibility is a great social spell. I tend to see myself using this whenever there's chests that have a ton of people nearby and I can't get to it. So I'll just go ahead, use Invisible, freaking open up the chests, get what's inside, and then walk away. Literally nobody is there. So it saves you from having to put points in like Sneak to reduce their area of their vision. And so I just see this as actually a really great spell. Combat, I don't see any use for invisibility personally because it's the same talking point. It's if you're getting attacked, you're playing combat wrong. So I would put this in the B tier for the social impact. Combat, typically wouldn't use it, but it's a really fun ability to have when you're like experiencing the story of the game. This is going in the D tier. This is your air absorption shield. I never find myself using this. I would actually rather save my action points if I had some left over than use this spell. It enchants self or ally with an air shield. It absorbs air damage until it breaks. Typically, I've never really came across anybody that does a ton of air damage, or just strictly air damage for that matter. So I just don't see it as a good use. I would rather take a different spell that has more utility in the long run than this specific spell. So that one's D tier. Next up, we have the Air Elemental. Air Elemental, I think, it's a solid B tier spell. It allows you to create an Air Elemental. Or summon one, and that's great being able to summon one because they can take damage and stuff. And the air elemental has its own spells. I believe it has Featherfall, and it has I want to say Blitzbolt, or one of those spells. I'm pretty sure it's Blitzbolt. But so it has its own like ability involved with that. However, I just don't see this spell as something that I think because you get 4 add up spells, I think you would include this. But for the most part, it's not necessarily the most game breaking spell. So we're gonna keep this in the B tier. Tornado, I actually really like Tornado. Tornado is great because it can go ahead and just take all of the surfaces away. So if you're having a party that has like 1 to 2 melee characters involved with it, and the enemy has like a line or a wall of fire or a wall of ice, boom, just drop a tornado, suck it up, so that way your melee guys can get in there and start doing a ton of damage. Super useful in that aspect. And also in the social environment when there's no enemies around, there's a ton of scenarios where like poison's on the ground or fire's on the ground and it stays there. Just tornado it up and you're good. So I think this is actually a very powerful spell I would highly recommend getting into. And then we got 4 more spells, guys, and these are the heavy hitters of the Aerotheurge class. The heavy hitters for sure. And we have first off the Chain Lightning spell. So Chain Lightning is fantastic. It's so strong. I'll briefly read it. Shoot a bolt of lightning that forks up to 5 times in a 7-meter radius and deals XY air damage. This is great. Any spell that deals damage plus has the potential of crowd control is super useful. The fact that you can potentially, in a perfect world, crowd control 5 enemies for 1 turn, or stun 5 enemies for 1 turn, and deal damage to all of those enemies, instantaneous lock for S tier. The other good thing is that it has 8 action points. So master tier spells typically are very high in action points, at least the damaging ones. So 8 action points is actually not that high in terms of other spells that you encounter. So definitely S tier. This is the make invisible skill. So you can make a target invisible, or you can make, an ally invisible. Whatever you want to make invisible, you can make invisible. I think it has to be a character though. So I actually don't see this good at all. I think that it goes back to the age old saying, if you're not attacking or being on the offensive, it's it it's a wasted spell. And there's other spells within the master tier that I would rather use than this one. So I don't see a use for this. That this one is C tier. You can use it in a social setting because it has 5 turns instead of in normal self invisibility is 2 turns. So this would last 5 turns, so you can stay invisible longer, which that is a good feature. This is the only reason why I'm putting it in C and not in D tier. Next up, we have the Nether Swap. So the Nether Swap, this is a good ability situationally. It essentially lets you take 2 characters and swap their places. So you can take your tank and basically put them into the center of combat at the enemy's party, and then take the weakest person from the enemy, or the strongest person, or the most impact that they have, and put them in an invulnerable spot. So I definitely think this is a great spell to have. I'm going to put it in B tier though, because it is situational based on the party style that you're going with. It doesn't necessarily work with all party styles. And I would rather use the other spell in this slot than use this one. Like this one would have to be like if I had like a Shackles of Pain man at arms tank, I want to get them right in the center, and then boom, get the taunt right after, and then all of the enemies essentially kill themselves because they're attacking the tank. Like that is a cool build, except it's a niche build. Like I don't think that would be the greatest thing at all. So last up, we have the Storm Master skill. So the Storm Master is create a lightning storm that randomly picks 8 to 10 targets and deals XY air damage. This one has an 11 action point cost. This one I would put in the A tier simply because it is 11 action points and it also has random targets. So, from my understanding, that means that they can attack your own team, which is obviously not a good thing. So you would have to center it or get it to the area of effect essentially to hopefully stay away from your guys. But if you have melee guys, they have the potential of getting hit. That's also where you can apply Avatar of Storms on one of your melee characters, so that way they won't get stunned by this specific ability. But overall, that's essentially how it would look. So this is like my ideal tier list of spells for the Aerotheurge, and then let me actually break down the spells that I would use for a generic Aerotheurge mage. So you get 6 novice spells, 4 adept spells, and then 2 master spells at level 5 in this class. So let me reset it, and I'll just drag the ones all the way up to S tier, the ones that I would take. So Blitzbolt, Bitter Cold, Avatar of Storms. We'll take this one over Thunder Jump because this Thunder Jump, we don't want our mage getting up close and personal at all, like ever. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are all the spells that we'll take. Blitzbolt, Bitter Cold, Avatar of Storms, Witch of Change, Shocking Touch, and Teleportation. Next up is the Adept. Obviously going to take Head Vice. It's very, very powerful. We'll take the Air Elemental because there's 5 total spells within the Adept for Aerotheurge, so you can take 4. So we'll take that one. We'll take Tornado. It's very good, as I mentioned. And then Invisibility is great. So Head Vice, Air Elemental, Tornado, and Invisibility are very good spells to take for a generic mage. You'll love this lineup right here. And then last up is the master spells, and you get 2 slots of those. So I would take Chain Lightning and I would take Storm. Chain Lightning is great, as I mentioned, lots of damage and lots of CC. Storm is the same thing, it just has a high action point and has a chance of hitting your own teammate. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. It really, means a lot to me. If you can leave your comments or your suggestions or anything in the comments and let me know if there's anything that I missed or builds that you've enjoyed while you've played Divinity Original Sin. And if you've never gotten a chance to play this game, go ahead and play it. It is super fun, super in depth. You will not regret it. It has a great story as well. It's just an all-around amazing game. I've enjoyed every second that I have played it, and I've played quite a few different party compositions as well. So there will be more videos like this coming soon. If you guys can like, subscribe the video, and also catch us on Kick at the Four Corner Society, and you can watch us play these games live and chat with us as well. So thank you so much. You have a wonderful day, and see you guys soon. Peace.